we have seen people like Representative Cori Bush, Representative Ayanna Presley, other members of the squad, Representative Lauren Underwood, demonstrate real diversity in how they bring an activism element into the space. Some would actually say some of those names aren't activists in the traditional sense, but how I define it is people who are committed to their communities, who are using the tools around them to produce results. Sometimes that shows up in a radical activism, and I put air quotes around radical because one person's radical is another person's,
right,
free flowing, whatever. So we have the radical end of the tradition. And then we have the end of activism, or the side of activism on the other end of the spectrum that feels a little quote unquote less radical, but is no less effective when done with that love ethic for our community. When you think about what type of coalition work you will be engaged in as a member of Congress, when you think about the partners that you will be, or the partnerships that are there now that you would be able to walk into, we see a lot of criticism for some of those members. We've seen a lot of criticism for well, let me just say this. We see a lot of praise for these activists when they win. And then when they embrace some of those tactics to continue the wins in their new seats, we see a lot of criticism. I'll raise again Representative Cori Bush, who we knew was an activist when she came in. That's how she got that win, because her community knew her, much like yourself. And then when she realized that there was not going to be any legislation that was going to ensure people did not get kicked out of their houses, she did what she had done as an activist. She went and sat on them stoops, on them stairs in front of their house. And while she was effective in the short term, it also created space for a conversation about whether or not activism is being performative, or can performative activism also have an impact and push the needle. What are your thoughts about that, about those proactive displays of activism, learned skills in the White House, in the calls of Congress? What do you say about why we should create space for those what some would call performative, I would call highly effective, those types of implementations of activism, tactics, skills, and strategies in spaces that we traditionally think are much more refined and too reserved for this type of uncouth display?
Well, what I think is performative are people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema calling themselves Democrats. Folks who have given the ability to stand in front of a group of their constituents and say that they are going to fight for these things in order to get reelected term after term. And that's more for Joe Manchin than Kristen Sinema, but don't follow through on those promises once they get into office. What's performative is saying that you're going to cancel student loan debt and then don't do it. What's performative is the inability to really fight for children who are being ripped out of the arms of their mothers in this immigration fight that we're having. All of these are policy choices. The fact that lead is still in our water is a policy choice. The fact that we are breathing toxic air, that there are food deserts and medical apartheid happening in a pandemic is a policy choice. And if you are really for the people, then you would do what Cori Bush did and say that housing is the number one social determinant of health. And so we need to keep people in our house, in their houses. And so she did that. She made sure that she put her body on the line in order that the stories of so many nameless, faceless people across the United States of America, and even when we talk in the broader context of global poverty, have a story that's being amplified. And I agree with you. Let's reimagine and redefine what radical means. We talk about performative measures. I'm here in the city of Chicago as a congressional candidate, fighting for the story and the life and the accountability to be had for the life of Laquan McDonald. Black folks in this country, when George Floyd was murdered, lynched, that was a modern day lynching that happened to George Floyd and Laquan McDonald. We didn't ask for y'all to paint boulevards with the name Black Lives Matter on it. We didn't ask for y'all to kneel with kente cloth around y'all's neck in the Democratic leadership. We didn't ask for that. What we asked was for systematic change, not symbolic victories. And so when we talk about performative, we must also hold to account the people who run on these promises say one thing and then do a complete opposite. And so, I think what Cori Bush did was absolutely courageous. And I think that we have to follow suit. And if you are not willing to put it all on the line for your constituents and for working class people and working poor people in this country, why are you in Congress?
One of the things that we have seen within activism and organizing spaces is that if you do not have a community that has received some political education, that has received some instruction on what it means to vet sources of information, if they have not been trained and prepared to understand how to operate in this system. One of the things that I'm always very clear about is that, yeah, we got the right to vote in 1965, but for the 345 years before that, we were intentionally excluded from gaining the experiential knowledge that's necessary, not just register to vote, but it is the knowledge of how this system works, or should I say the lack thereof, that often keeps many in our community completely in the dark with regards to being able to speak effectively to power. What is it that you have seen that works in your experiences as an activist in terms of educating the community on how to engage with this system more effectively, particularly because I personally don't have the ability or the funds to snap my fingers and get us all out of here, which is my long life dream. What do you say to that?
I think you have to meet voters where they are. You have to talk about the issues that are important to them. We cannot negate or invalidate the feelings of disillusionment that voters have around the gridlock happening in our Congress and our state houses, the racist gerrymandering that is happening. It all feels so overwhelming. And so one, especially younger generations of organizers and community members, we have to let them know that it's not going to just happen overnight, but you have to celebrate those small victories. Every small victory is an inch closer to what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to achieve. I think you're going to have Nina Turner on today, or you may have already had her on, but Nina Turner says, when in doubt, we organize. When in doubt, organize. And so I say that the way that we win everything is organize people, organize money, and then organizing your narrative so that you can educate the people in the community. And so I think the best thing that has worked for me and in my organizing background, whether it be electoral or just single issue campaigns in the community, is striking at the heart of why people should be engaged and really listening to them. Because as you said, when we talk about what we think is radical, you know, it's like housing, clean water, keeping our public schools open. These are not radical acts. These are things that are necessities for people to live dignified lives in their community.
That's right. And if we lived in a community that was more holistic, or I should say a nation that was more communally centered, those things would be provided as a matter of expectation, because that is what a communal society does.